Next, we have the Ontario Lung Association. I believe we have Mr. Chris Yacato, Provincial Manager, Government Relations and Public Affairs. And we also have another one. So
I'll be
perhaps you
sharing my time.
okay, could you just introduce both yourselves, please?
Yes,
for the
so
record?
good afternoon, Chair, Clerk, members. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. My name is Chris Yacato, Manager, Public Affairs and Government Relations with the Ontario Lung Association. I'll be sharing most of the time with Trisesha, a young volunteer with the OLA who feel can better advocate to show our support for Bill 45. So I'm going to hand it over to Trisesha. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair, Clerk, and committee members. My name is Shirtesha Pandya, and I am a high school student and an Ontario Lung Association volunteer. I have been involved in organized tobacco control for over 3 years, but I have been a tobacco-free advocate since birth. My uncle was 16 when he got hooked on menthol chew tobacco, and he has been addicted to it ever since. I have tried to help him quit and have seen how difficult and painful those many attempts have been. I'm 16 now, and I know that I don't want to be targeted by the tobacco industry like he was. Nearly everyone who becomes addicted to tobacco starts as a teenager, and they think they can quit at any time. It's only when they try to quit that they realize how hard it really is. Resources are available to people who are trying to quit, but it would be so much better if we supported people into not using tobacco in the first place. Protecting young Ontarians from the influence of tobacco marketing is a great place to start. As the weather gets warmer, my friends and I will be eating a lot of frozen yogurt. If you've ever been to a frozen yogurt shop, you've probably seen and been amazed by the endless varieties of flavors. Cherry, vanilla, chocolate, mint, cinnamon. Sounds delicious, doesn't it? Unfortunately, these flavors aren't only found in frozen yogurt. These flavors are also placed in tobacco products designed to tempt young people and get them addicted. Research shows that more than half of Canadian youth who use tobacco are using flavored products. These can include flavored cigars, cigarillos, chewing tobacco, and flavored tobacco in water pipes and shisha. This research also found that almost 1 in 3 youth cigarette smokers used menthol cigarettes in the previous 30 days. Many young people are attracted to flavored tobacco because it seems less harmful and it tastes and looks like candy. The tobacco industry deliberately packages and markets these products to teenagers like me, and it has to stop. This is why I support Bill 45. By prohibiting flavors in tobacco products, you will be protecting young people like me from the temptation of trying and becoming addicted to this deadly product. Bill 45 also regulates the sale and use of electronic cigarettes, including a ban on the sale and supply to anyone under 19. This is so important because we don't know the long-term health impacts of using e-cigs. Many young people assume they're safer than regular cigarettes because of the way they're promoted and marketed, and again, because they come in these youth-friendly flavors. In 2013, approximately 15% of Ontario youth in grades 9 to 12 used e-cigarettes, and nearly 5% of those used e-cigarettes containing nicotine. The reality is that e-cigarettes are still getting a generation hooked on nicotine, leading them down the path to tobacco use, addiction, and the terrible health impacts that will almost inevitably follow. The Ontario Lung Association and I fully support Bill 45. That being said, we have one very important suggestion, and that is to ban menthol at the same time as other flavors. Our worry is that if you give the tobacco industry an inch, they will take a mile. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that, and we shall begin with the third party, Ms. Fife.
Didn't I go last time? Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thanks also for participating in the plan with Ms. Jelena. I think it was. I think it's very empowering to hear voices of youth weigh in on this issue. You know, the legislation as it's crafted right now gives a 2-year window to continue menthol cigarettes in the province. Would you like to comment on that?
We know that the tobacco industry will take advantage of any leniency or time that they are given and figure out a way to victimize even more youth. Nova Scotia is on its way to a full ban on menthol, and if they can do it, I think we can too.
Okay. So why do you think, though, the government you know, did you want to, I mean, I know you had that statement in your notes, but why would the government leave that window open, do you think?
I think it's more for the adults who, if we do ban menthol, the adults may have a problem with, it would be really hard for them. And knowing that my uncle, personally, he does do menthol chewed tobacco, it would be really hard if there was a ban on menthol. But that would also motivate him at the same time to figure out another way to get around by not using menthol chewed tobacco anymore.
Thank you. And so your uncle is chewing tobacco?
Yes.
Menthol chewing tobacco. I know my son, who's 16, has told me that students have started, chewing tobacco is making a comeback, which is just disgusting, right? I mean, flavored chewing tobacco, it's awful. You know, I just want to thank you very much for coming in and for the association, because you're absolutely right. I mean, young people have to stand up for themselves, and their voices need to be reflected in this legislation. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Hogarth.
Yes, I just thank you for your presentation. You're an amazing young woman. I'd like to just ask Chris, could you give us some clarification about what was being said about the Nova Scotia Lung Association? I think.
Yeah,
Could you clear that up
I
for
think
us,
there's some
please?
miscommunication there. So the way the lung associations work across Canada is we have a central Canadian Lung Association followed by provincial associations. So the Nova Scotia Lung Association took the step of reaching out to the public and listening and seeking input back. Are e-cigarettes safe? Are they bad? Can they help you get off smoking? Do they not? So it's that kind of combination of thinking that I think is where the line of questioning was coming from MPP Hillier. I'd have to send the committee a little more information on that, simply because there is no broad position statement. So I wasn't sure where that kind of quote came from. And make no mistake, all the lung associations across the country are united in their belief that regulation and the approach that, you know, the province of Ontario and other jurisdictions are taking is adequate.
Better to be safe than
Better
sorry.
be safe than sorry.
And I just wanted to ask you, Ms. Pandia, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for being with us here today. And why is it that you've become such a youth advocate for lung health?
So as I also said, my uncle and so I came from India, I was an immigrant. Back in India, it was pretty normal for people to be chewing tobacco and using tobacco products. But when I came here, and I learned more about like the health impacts and the negative impacts of tobacco in general, I knew that I did not want my family or anyone that I cared about to be affected by such negative impact. And I knew at that point that I needed to step up and inform myself about the negative impacts so I can inform my family, my peers, and other members who are getting affected by this. And some of them don't even know, like they don't even have an idea of how bad this product is for them.
Okay, one more. I just wanted to ask, is flavored tobacco being marketed to young people? And if so, how do you see that happening?
So personally, some of my friends, they do use flavored tobacco products, and I've talked to some of them, and they have said that, like, it's the same thing as I said, frozen yogurt. It's like when you go and you see these amazing brands, amazing flavors just right in front of you, you get curious to try them, and you try them once, and you're like, whoa, that tastes like candy, that was really good. You try it again, and at a point, you think you can just stop. But the truth is you do get addicted, and you can't really do anything about it as a young person, so you just keep doing it.
Do your friends know there's nicotine in them, in the e-cigarettes?
Some of them don't because they don't really ask, because they just think they're doing it for one time and they're going to be done with it. But that's why I said that I wanted to be informed about it so I could inform them and let them know that there are the negative impacts of.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much. Welcome to both of you. It's a great presentation. I'm again a little bit conflicted because of this Lung Association of Nova Scotia, Chris. You know, the report that I believe has been provided to all of us is the Flavored Product Consultation Report. So they're suggesting in here that you know, e-cigarettes do not contain tobacco. There's a lack of evidence about them. No harm proven. There may be a potential benefit, and they are recognized for harm reduction. The recommendation says the Lung Association of Nova Scotia recommend that the issue of tobacco smoking and e-cigarette use be considered independently. To combine two fundamentally different products will skew the discussion and likely make intended outcomes more difficult to realize. And I'm struggling, to be honest, because I have a large cohort of people in my riding and across the province with all of the anecdotal stuff we've received that are saying this is a good thing. I stopped smoking. You may not have been here earlier. I have 4 members of my siblings that all smoked. Thank goodness they've all stopped. Sadly, one of them died. The other has cancer. So anything that, to me, helps stop. And they tried, nicotine. They tried the patch. They tried everything. They tried cold turkey. These things help them. So I'm not prepared to just say an absolute, let's not go there. And I want to have a little bit of evidence that's conclusive that says a youth smoking an e-cigarette actually ever turns to proper tobacco. Lots of anecdotal, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people do that with alcohol. It's flavored alcohol. It's known that it's harmful to our health. So we have to be consistent in what we're doing. One of the members of the of the government today said a number of other things about banning. Cell phones are supposed to be potentially harmful to our health, but we all have them beside our ears. So what I'm trying to figure out is a balanced way to look at this and say, what is the upside to doing this? And yes, there's some conclusive studies. There's one here, and it is from the Professor Igor Burstin, I hope I said it right, the Drexel University School of Public Health, confirms that chemicals in electronic cigarettes pose no health concerns for users or bystanders. By reviewing over 9,000 observations about the chemistry of the vapor and the liquid in e-cigarettes, Dr. Burstin was able to determine that the levels of contaminants e-cigarette users are exposed to are insignificant, far below levels that would pose any health risk. So proposals to ban e-cigarettes in places where smoking is banned have been based on concern there is a potential risk. I want absolutely conclusive. And yes, we can go on the precautionary principle. We could do that in a lot of things. And I said when I first stood up in the House, this is one piece of it that I think needs more time, needs more deliberation, needs conclusive. And when I see one of your colleagues, associations, saying, we pulled this back, it gives me more cause. And I'm the first guy to say we want to protect the public. We all come here with the inherent interest in protecting the public. But I also don't want to throw the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah, no. So if I can address that, I'm not familiar with that report, but I think you've captured the essence of the bill. And you're right, we absolutely need a balanced approach. So the regulating the industry now and dealing with it as we learn the studies and Mr. Schwartz does the research, we can come out and look at it if need be. But the approach taken now and banning it in cars with youth or to those under 19, I think is a reasonable approach that is a good step to dealing with even your type of suggestions.
Yeah, and I think if we took them clause by clause in some of those.
Respecting the chair, Mr. Walker, appreciate that.
Always,
Thank
Chair.
you for
you.
coming. Really appreciate that. So next on the agenda, we have the Ontario Restaurant, Hotel and Motel Association. And my list had included 4, but perhaps if you could just take some time and introduce yourselves prior to commencing, that would be wonderful.
Is there any information?
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
I'm ready to go.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Schmakel. I am the Vice President of Government Relations with the Ontario Restaurant Hotel Motel Association. We are Canada's largest provincial hospitality association, representing well over 11,000 members. With me today is our President and CEO, Tony Alanis, from ORMA as well. Today I will be speaking to you about the nutritional labeling legislation within Bill 45. It does not surprise us that the provincial government is proceeding with legislation requiring how and which restaurants provide calories to menu items to be posted on their menu boards and menus. Such legislation is not new in North America. Many other jurisdictions have it. We know the restaurant industry has already shown leadership. Many already have nutritional information available at their restaurants on tray liners, posters, pamphlets, QR codes, or nutritional information apps. Many also have nutritional information available on their websites so their guests can plan ahead before dining out or ordering. Many believe it is the response to political pressure that restaurants are offering nutrition information. However, we do know our consumers are seeking nutritional information, and many restaurants have already stepped up for decades to do this. As we know, municipalities led by the City of Toronto were preparing to regulate menu labeling. This would have led to a patchwork of policy models all over Ontario. It would have had dire consequences for our industry, and we are pleased to see that the provincial legislation supersedes any municipal bylaws. We are also supportive of the government's requirement to post calories only on applicable standard food items. If one was required to post other nutritional values such as sodium, it would be cumbersome and challenging to read and post on the menu board. For our members implicated by the creation of this menu labeling legislation, they ask for a longer implementation period to ensure compliance. The restaurant industry, since the recession of 2008 and 2009, has changed. It's not about revenue growth anymore. It's about pressures on the expense line impacting the razor-thin business bottom lines currently running at an average of 3.5% pre-tax profit. Full-service restaurants are operating at about 2.5% pre-tax. Today, our restaurants in Ontario have the lowest profit margin in all of Canada, and they will have to pay for nutrition labeling, not the government. This is another cost for thousands of franchisees and corporate restaurants. We ask that you take this into consideration and revise the legislation to include a longer implementation period of 18 months. This will allow franchisees to build these costs into their business plans gradually, as this legislation directly impacts their business bottom line. Another ongoing cost, just like labor, hydro, and food. It is our understanding, having consultations with the Ministry of Health, there will be a requirement for posting of calories on beverage alcohol. We ask that the government not require the posting of calories for beverage alcohol on their restaurant menus. We ask this because the purpose of menu labeling was to address childhood obesity, and we all know it's illegal for children to drink alcohol and inappropriate. The requirement to post alcohol beverages is unfair. The LCBO is a publicly owned asset that continues to provide our hospitality sector with alcohol, and they are not required to post calories, but the private restaurant operator will legally be obligated to do so. We feel this is unfair. If LCBO is exempt, our restaurants should be as well. The beer store is not included in this legislation either. And they are not required to post calories on their menu board, but restaurant operators will be. Again, this is an unfair disadvantage for our industry. We ask that the government contribute to an education campaign to ensure awareness, to ensure public health inspectors are fully trained on the legislative requirements and do not get bogged down on the font size of calories. ORMA and our membership will continue to work with the government on the legislation and regulations to mitigate more red tape and cost to our industry. I appreciate your time, and I'll take questions now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Had a minute to go. So we shall start with Mr. Walker from the opposition.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and certainly a key component of this, and I again spoke to it in the House. I'm a rec guy from way back, rec being recreation. I was wondering why the government didn't include some of this about obesity, the ability to actually lead a fitter life. That actually has a lot more impact than some of the other things that I think that have been put in the bill. So certainly that's an area that I have. I want to ask a point of clarification. You referenced the longer time to be able to adhere to this and to make plans, which makes sense. Most of us, I think, would not be able to adjust overnight. Did you receive any prior consultation to this bill being introduced as a stakeholder from an industry perspective prior to seeing this?
The ministry did have consultations and a roundtable discussion prior to the election on particular pieces of this bill and forming the legislation. The compliance was discussed as far as 12 months versus 18 months, and our industry had asked for 18 months, and we continue to advocate for that. A lot of it is based on business plans year over year, and corporations need the time and the ability to adjust their costs, because the cost will be downloaded onto franchisees for the cost of posting, changing menus, or changing the digital menu boards as well.
Sure. And certainly share your concern that without a public education campaign and awareness so people actually understand what the numbers or data that they're being provided say. You know, the other side is a good thing, and I believe if you had that would be more palatable. The other side of this is actually about the enforcement and policing, and I have a real concern from your industry perspective that's been brought to my attention is, so you are trying to be cooperative, you are trying to work with them, but someone can walk into your establishment or one of your establishments and say, you're not up to date, and that changed 3 days ago and you just haven't got the labeling. So this goes a broad thing about labeling that I hear a fair bit across all of our industries of, you know, it's that compliance and that enforcement, and we don't want people running around like they do in regard to the new College of Trades, where they're actually going out trying to find the good, abiding citizens of our province who are trying to create jobs and keep people working, and finding them as opposed to leaving the people that are running the under-the-cover shops going. So I really have a concern with that. Certainly the fairness and the red tape is absolutely, I mean, we talk every day about the amount of red tape, particularly as business owners. You know, I hear every day in my constituency, as I'm sure all of the colleagues here do, the amount of forms and the regulation that we have to adhere to in regard to filing forms, leaves me very little time to actually talk to my customer and the person that actually pays the freight here. So, you know, I'm concerned at times that when some of this legislation, I'm glad to hear that there was at least some consultation. I don't always hear that. And I also, though, I think heard you say that you had some aspects were discussed. And I'm not certain really all of those made it to the bill, or some of the things you were asking for didn't make it. So, you know, I'd like to provide you an opportunity if there's any other specific ones to provide back, and I'll open up to my two colleagues.
Can I address that then?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. As far as
15
the
seconds.
regulations will have to be prescriptive, absolutely. I mean, it took over 3 years in the United States to get this right with the regulations to be compiled. And I think for our sector, we are not consulted on the regulations. We were consulted on the legislation, and we did get involved asking for regulation opportunities, and we have not been privy to those at this time. If they're being drafted, we would want them to be prescriptive to address all the issues you've just raised. As far as one of the biggest aspect for many of our corporate members as well is to have the data and the recipes in every restaurant. Wouldn't it be easier just to go to the corporate head office and have a one-stop shop, and they compile the data and make sure they're in compliance for their standard products?
Okay.
As opposed to allowing the franchisee to have binders in their back office.
Thank you
as
very
well.
much. So we'll have to move over to Ms. Fife. Sorry.
Well,
Just back, taking away customer service. It also inhibits and curtails innovation. The chef of today is an artist. He likes to paint, and that would limit culinary advancement.
thank you. So I guess the risk, though, and thank you very much for the presentation, Leslie and Tony, that the risk is that if we don't get it right, then things don't change, right? And so you're making the case for additional time to roll this out. And I do want to say, I think that, the Ontario Restaurant Association and your respective hotels, you're already adapting to the needs of consumers, and so you've already been changing. So if there was one thing that if there was one thing of this legislation which you could actually change right now to make sure that actually we get it right, that the government gets it right, what would it be?
Good question.
Not to include alcohol, as Leslie mentioned.
Not to include alcohol.
Alcoholic beverages, when you look at wines, a bottle of Amarone has a 14.5 alcohol. A Chianti has 13%. The higher you go, the higher the sugar. There are hot summers that influence it, and it can get really complicated with something that should be a culinary experience. Many drinks have flavors, ingredients that vary, and again, that can get complicated.
Okay, and Leslie?
If I can just add, we purchase our alcohol and our beverages from either the LCBO or the beer store. And if they're not obligated to post calories on their bottles, how are our restaurant owners supposed to go to the back room and figure out the range of calories? And wines age as they sit in a cellar. The content changes, the sugar changes, everything about it.
Yep.
So the range could be, anywhere from 1,000, to wherever. So how is that actually being honest with the consumer? So for us, the bigger issue is we can't actually supply that. We're looking to the distributor, who would also be obligated to post this. But my understanding in the conversations is that the LCBO is working with the ministry on this, and that's.
I would also advise there might be trade implications, as we recently found with a recent announcement from where alcoholic beverages are rooted coming into this country.
Sure, that's a good point. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. We shall move to the government side. Ms. Koala.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's nice to see you both here. I just wanted to highlight a couple of points that Bill 45 will help make healthier choices for parents, make healthier choices for their children. And one of the primary concerns of this schedule of this bill is about obesity in children, and calories are the most appropriate information with respect to obesity on menus. Can I ask you? You said that you did have some consultations prior to the legislation. Were those consultations part of the government's Healthy Kids strategy?
It was a result of the Healthy Kids strategy. So they had set up 2 days of consultation to talk about the content of the panel and putting together nutritional labeling, menu labeling legislation.
Okay. Do you agree that it's important to empower parents with that nutritional information as transparently as possible so that parents can make better choices for their children?
I think as a mother with young children, I think at the end of the day, I have a common sense factor of what is good and what is bad.
Yeah.
And will it matter if I see calorie ranges? I don't think it will for me particularly because I work in the hospitality industry and I have a good understanding of what, content is in our food. Transparency, you're only getting part of the story when you talk about calories and looking at a menu board. Many of our brand members have nutritional information in a pamphlet and other QR codes. They have it on the website, and you get the full story there. You get all the nutritional values there. And I think to me, having that as is probably as a layer and the bonus in all of this.
So if you're,
If I can add something to that, the concern is also that food service only makes up 25 to 30% at the most of food consumed. Most of it is eaten at home and outside the restaurants.
actually, there's an increasing rate of Canadians who are eating out
And
now.
we realize that.
And Canadians, as you
Yeah,
know,
and we
are
realize that, but it's still a
increasingly
large
busy.
share outside.
Now, you've mentioned a couple of times that on the information is sometimes available on websites, but if you're out in a restaurant, I'm not sure how inclined people would be to look up on a website how many calories you would have. But I'm wondering if you can tell me if you, do you feel it's appropriate that Bill 45 would not require a single location, mom and pop type of restaurant to list calories on their menus? Are you pleased to see that it's with restaurants that are 20 or more locations?
We're very pleased with that. It becomes a burden and a lot of inaccuracies when you're dealing with a smaller business.
Appreciate you coming before committee this afternoon. So next we have Restaurants Canada. And I believe is it Mr. Rillet and Ms. Reynolds are here with us this afternoon, so welcome. You have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Excellent. Thank you. My name's Jamie Rylett. I'm Vice President Ontario with Restaurants Canada, and with me is Joyce Reynolds, the Executive Vice President for Government Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about calorie posting part of the bill. First, we recognize obesity as a serious and a complicated issue requiring multifaceted solutions. Our members have taken action to support goals of improving diet and reducing obesity by reformulating their menus and offering more healthy options, making changes to portion sizes, and investing in sports and activity-based sponsorships to help hundreds of thousands of Canadians live actively. Chain restaurants also work hard to put meaningful information into the hands of their consumers so they can make informed choices, and most provide nutritional information in a variety of ways. Our members are responding to the information needs of their customers, which include nutrient values beyond calories, including carbohydrates, saturated fats, trans fats, fiber, protein, and sodium. It had been our hope that Ontario would be part of the informed dining program developed by the province of British Columbia and would provide nutrition information to restaurant patrons across Canada in a consistent way using a common symbol method. Now that the government has chosen the lead of the U.S. instead for using a calorie posting system, we are prepared to work with the government on a smooth implementation. One of the biggest concerns with calorie posting on menus and menu boards is the inevitable call for the expansion of nutrient values. Our industry has been faced with policy proposals to post allergens, GMOs, trans fat, carbohydrates, sodium, gluten, and now we're hearing about sugar, both natural and added. To confirm our concerns, you are already being asked to double the scope of the program before the legislation is even passed. When more than one value is added to the menu, it becomes much more complex to communicate information to customers in a meaningful way. Consumers are forced to make quick judgments based on conflicting values. Ministry of Health officials cite studies that state consumer response is reduced when more values are added. Sodium values are particularly challenging given consumer confusion and lack of scientific consensus on maximum minimum limits. Restaurants offer menu choices in multiple varieties, flavors, and options for customization. Canadians like to customize the toppings on their pizza, make up their sub and condiments and fixings on their hamburger. Restaurants typically offer multiple flavors and sizes of drinks, baked goods, and sides that aren't individually listed on a menu or menu board. There are a myriad of options when ordering coffee. Every circumstance needs to be properly addressed for clarity. With each additional value, these complications rise exponentially. Don't get fooled by those who say that calorie posting is not complex. The US FDA took 5 years to develop their regulations with the assistance of a massive stakeholder engagement. Everyone wants to get this right. It is in no one's interest for the experiment to fail. That is why it's important to get the program in place, work out the kinks, and evaluate its success before considering expansion. Our second request to this committee is to require the Ministry of Health to implement a pre-approval process to ensure a uniform application of the law. Chains operate across the province, and enforcement will be outsourced to municipalities. That is why we support the section of the legislation that guarantees legislation will supersede municipal authority. The higher penalty cited in the legislation makes it incumbent on the government to leave no room for varied interpretation. The menu creation process is long and expensive. Design alone can take 4 to 6 months, and menus often stay in rotation for a year or more. The government must have a process whereby companies can get pre-approval early in the process to avoid costly delays and multiple interpretations. Finally, I would urge you to insert a clause guaranteeing an implementation period of 18 to 24 months after royal assent. Restaurants cannot begin their development and testing processes until regulations are complete. With all chains looking at the same resource pools for testing and design services, the implementation period needs to be long enough to get the program right. In conclusion, we urge you to take the time to get it right. This means limiting the scope to calorie posting, ensuring there's a pre-approval process for menus and menu boards, and an implementation period of 18 to 24 months. Thank you.
And we'll start with third party, Ms. Fife.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate actually the format that you brought your asks to us, and I appreciate they asked for more time so that we actually do it right the first time. The approval process I find interesting, and so you cite here that the government's decided to outsource the enforcement to municipalities. You cite some concerns about that. And then you also say, without an approval process, inspectors hold an unreasonable amount of interpretive power. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, I guess what we're looking at, and anybody who has a rural riding will remember back a few years ago when the interpretation of public health rules led to inspectors going out to church basements and dumping bleach on sandwiches and stopping pie contests, et cetera. So we don't want to run into something like that. So all we're asking for is if they want to have the enforcement go to the public health boards, at least give them some guidance so that if we get something approved centrally, then we can't have a board somewhere else overrule that.
And if I could add to that, one of our big concerns is the massive expenditure that there will be initially to design the menu boards and design the menus. And then once the menus are printed and circulated, distributed, and then somebody says, well, the range value is wrong, you should have done the range from this to this, and then to have to go and reprint all those menus and recirculate them. So it makes sense that you'd have a Ministry of Health official look at these beforehand and approve them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good suggestion. And I'm interested in this because when the government brought in their changes to school boards, their green, yellow, and red light on certain foods, there was churches that were, baking muffins for hungry kids who didn't have a breakfast program, and there was apparently like a couple extra grams of fat in those muffins, and so those kids didn't get the muffins. I would argue that some food is better than no food, right? So I appreciate the sort of a preemptive move with regards to this. But the sodium, the research on sodium is pretty strong right now, and so I just want to give you an opportunity to weigh in, because we really feel that sodium is a huge issue in food, and it has detrimental effects to health. So, and yet you sort of counter some of that research in your thoughts here. Do you want to speak to that, please?
Well, there is a recent University of McMaster study that questions the limits and And there are actually several studies that question the current sodium limits. But that's really not the issue. Our concern is really the complexity and the confusion and the legibility and how meaningful the information can be if you include too many values on both a menu or menu board.
Yeah.
And already you're looking, because of the format of a menu board where you only have you have one line with a price for, let's say, muffins, and then but they have a range of calories. But then if you bring sodium into the mix, well, then you're going to have an entirely different range. And it's very difficult to interpret data when you try to, and we have experience from the U.S. to show that how confusing and how little the information is used.
And I think the key piece is the education, right? Because otherwise they don't know what they're buying.
Apologize, it's
Sorry.
overtime as well. So we'll go to the government, Ms. Hogarth.
Thank you very much for your presentation here today. And I am a patron of many of the restaurants all around Ontario. I eat out way too much. And the amount of sodium that is in products does concern me. More as an educator who sees more and more young children who are eating in restaurants. And also, I just want to know, do you agree that it's important to empower parents with the nutritional information as transparently as possible, so far as they make better choices for their kids, due to the fact that we have this rising amount of obesity in children?
Sorry. First of all, I don't blame you. Barrie has some great restaurants, so you're
Sorry?
lucky. Barrie has some great restaurants, so
I
you're
know,
lucky
we
in
have
that.
wonderful ones. Thank you.
And quickly on the education, yes, we do find education is important, and that's a needed part to getting parents to make the right decisions. But, that information has always been there. I have 3 children. I know that if my daughter has a basketball tournament and she's been practicing all week and I want to treat her to a meal out, I know what's good and what's not. I don't need to see the calories right above. But if you're insistent on, if the decision has been made to go down that road, I think the problem adding a second value is it makes parents have to make the decision, do I have a higher sodium a thing with lower calories, or do I have the lower calories with the higher sodium? And I think just working with restaurants to help them rejig their menus and to get people to ask for the lower sodium items will go a long way. Often a lot of products are brought forward at restaurants that simply don't sell because it's not requested, or it's not popular with the customers. So an education program as well helps. But I think most parents know what's good and what's not. And if this provides them with a little extra information, that would be great. But we really need to get it right first before we think about expanding it.
Well, thank you. When I was in the States, for years I've been going to the Olive Garden and picking something, and then all of a sudden they had the nutritional value and the calories on it, and I realized that I better pick something different because it was about 3 times my second choice in regards to calories. Is it important that we have a consistent approach on menu labeling across Ontario? No matter what it is, it needs to be consistent?
Yes, I think we should have it across the country as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Thompson.
Thanks very much, Chair. How do I say this? The government of the day has a habit of picking winners and losers, and I'm wondering if you feel that this particular Bill 45 is doing just that. They're burdening you with more red tape in terms of calorie counts, and are there other sectors of food providers, meal providers that we're missing, and how should we be addressing that? Like, I'm thinking, my husband probably went to the grocery store today and bought his lunch from the deli counter. Like, those calories won't be included. So I'd be interested to know your perspective on that.
Well, we asked, when we first started talking about this in the previous iteration of this bill, we did ask that all prepared foods be treated equally, and I believe that's the government's intention. A lot of this is in regulation, so we won't know exactly, but the intention, we're told, is prepared foods in grocery stores and things like movie theaters, et cetera, will be included. So I don't want to indicate, or I don't want to guess what the government's intention vis-a-vis winners or losers, but, you know, I do take them at their word that they will include everyone that does prepare food in this legislation.
And what does your gut tell you? Is this going to change habit?
We haven't seen any indication on studies that this does change habits. You see, the studies that show that it does are performed in a closed setting or with people that say, what is your intention? But all the studies we've seen where they've actually implemented it in an area, the most popular, or the most well-known is the New Jersey study, which showed that it didn't affect behavior whatsoever. And anecdotally, it actually showed on certain teenagers especially that they saw calories as a value. So if I have $5 to spend and I can get the combo that has 1,000 calories, the combo that has 1,500, it's more valued for my money to get the 1,500 one.
So in actual fact, it had the converse result.
That second part was anecdotal, so we don't know. But for sure, the study did say that there was no effect on ordering patterns.
Okay. How many? 30. Is there anything else you want to add in terms of, I know what my question was. How much is it going to cost a franchise per se to change their menus over? You're already being burdened with ORPP, lots of red tape, electricity costs, et cetera. How much is this going to cost businesses?
It's going to cost them thousands of dollars. We don't know. We have to see what the regulations say. I did want to just touch on another question though about in terms of the who it applies to in the limit of 20. One of the things that our members have said where they feel that there's still some unfairness is you have new brands coming in from the U.S. They may only have a couple brands here in a couple of stores here in Canada initially, but they're a very big brand in the U.S. And so those in Canada feel that some of these chains may have an unfair advantage if they're not required to do it if they're a well-known brand in the U.S.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming before committee, the two of you. So next we have the National Coalition Against Contraband Tobacco, Mr. Gary Grant, who is the national spokesman. Glorious last name. So welcome, sir.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I am the spokesperson for the National Coalition Against Contraband Tobacco and a 39-and-a-half-year retired veteran of the Toronto Police Service. Our coalition is made up of 17 organizations from across Canada, representing industry associations, business groups, and law enforcement. The NCACT is a non-profit, non-partisan organization whose goal is to make the public more aware and government more aware of the problem of illegal cigarettes and contraband tobacco. Ontario has the worst contraband tobacco problem in Canada, with 1 in 3 cigarettes purchased over the past year being illegal. That's bad for all Ontarians. Illegal cigarettes are a cash cow for organized crime, with criminals using the proceeds to fund other illegal activities, including guns, drugs, even human smuggling. The RCMP have identified more than $100 million in suspicious transactions from one contraband hotspot alone. What is contraband? As we know, it's unregulated and it is extremely cheap. A baggie of 200 illegal cigarettes sells for as little as $8, less than the price of a movie ticket. Also of serious concern, the criminals that sell them certainly don't ask for identification from our young people. It is no wonder that contraband tobacco has a direct impact on youth smoking. In fact, the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health has flagged contraband's easy availability as a prime reason for Ontario's stubbornly high youth smoking rate. One of the most functions of the NCACT is making sure that the public understands the impact of illegal cigarettes, something that many Ontarians may incorrectly view as a victimless crime. The fact is, illegal cigarettes fund some of Canada's least desirable elements. The RCMP estimates that contraband tobacco is the cash cow of more than 175 criminal gangs who use the proceeds to finance their other activities, as I mentioned. The Ontario government has identified this as a problem. This past November, the Minister of Finance announced the need to take more action against contraband tobacco, but failed to actually introduce new measures to address the problem. Just 1 week following Minister Sousa's statement on the need to combat the province's illegal tobacco trade, Bill 45, the Making Healthier Choices Act, was introduced, which places a ban on flavored tobacco, including menthol. The NCACT has many times seen that when a tobacco product is banned, demand for an illegal substitute spikes. Last year, a report on the RCMP's federal tobacco control strategy noted that illicit manufacturers are producing flavored little cigars to meet the growing demand on the black market, particularly following the federal ban on these products. It is no different with menthol cigarettes, where there are already twice as many illegal menthol products available as legal ones. This legislation will effectively hand 5% of the province's legal cigarette market to organized crime. To put it in clearer terms, that's more than 300 million cigarettes each and every year, representing more than $130 million in lost tax revenues. Without first addressing Ontario's rampant contraband tobacco problem by introducing real measures to address contraband tobacco, Ontario, through Bill 45, is effectively handing organized crime groups more of Ontario's contraband tobacco market. The contraband tobacco problem is out of control in Ontario. The federal government has started to take more tough action through Bill C-10, which allows police to lay criminal charges against contraband smugglers. Ontario, however, is falling behind and has consistently failed to introduce new measures to address this problem. Ontario has made commitments in the last 3 provincial budgets to implement new anti-contraband tobacco measures, and seeing as we are just days away from the budget, we hope to see measures included that have demonstrated success in other jurisdictions like Quebec. These include tougher fines and additional powers for local, municipal, and provincial police to lead anti-contraband investigations, as well as a greater licensing of cigarette manufacturing materials. The successful introduction of measures like this must come before drastic changes are made to the legal market. Without doing so, Bill 45 will be a boon to the criminals that smuggle illegal cigarettes, with little change in the availability of a flavored tobacco product. So we come here with a recommendation to exempt menthol from the flavored tobacco ban until such a time as meaningful progress has been made on contraband tobacco. If the illegal tobacco problem in Ontario continues to be as significant as it is currently, this menthol ban will absolutely create a larger contraband market and drive consumers to the underground economy. The government should commit to implementing a review of the potential ban in 2 years rather than automatic implementation. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant. We'll move to Mr. Cole from the government side.
Welcome, Mr. Grant. Welcome
Mr.
back.
Cole.
How are you doing?
I'm great, thanks.
New chief today.
We do. Great man.
Yeah, worked his way up from the bottom, yeah. In terms of the contraband, you mentioned that Ontario should take extra steps. What specifically should we be doing to try and combat it?
I would suggest taking a look at best practices, and right now I suggest that Quebec has the best practice, which they have authorized their provincial and the municipal police officers to conduct full contraband investigations, whereas in Ontario it's been, if a municipal police officer seizes a large amount of contraband, they normally would have to turn it over to the RCMP or Ontario Revenue for investigation, and this doesn't really motivate police officers to get involved. So if the provincial and municipal police officers had full authority to take the investigation from arrest, seizure, all the way through the courts to a conviction or not, that would be an impetus. And also in Quebec, there's a fund put aside, I can't remember the name of it right now, much like our RIDE program here in Ontario that's proven successful, that any fines that come in on the contraband tobacco, say from Stratford, for instance, the money would go back to Stratford, to the province, provincial force, or to the municipal service that the fines were funded, and they reintroduced that to fund more tobacco enforcement.
Yeah, so basically the proceeds from crime would stay with the force that undertook the investigation, right?
Well, for sure, the fine money. I can't speak for certain about what they're doing with the proceeds, but I would assume it would certainly be a great step.
So these people, criminal gangs that are involved in this very lucrative business, where are they getting their tobacco from?
Well, most of the tobacco is coming from First Nations. Smuggled in quite a bit of it from the United States. While I was in Windsor last week, there was a huge seizure, Niagara Falls, there was a huge seizure at the border coming in. It's being brought in the Cornwall area very significantly, and comes in from First Nations reserves, but it's so lucrative now to criminals. It's not just a few people driving in to the smoke shop and getting some cigarettes. It's transport trailers full of tobacco or contraband cigarettes, and then being smuggled in to the province through various ways, whether it's across the St. Lawrence or a regular land border crossing. But it is coming in from mostly the States through First Nations land.
So does it come in already in cigarettes, or does it come in as tobacco?
Sometimes it's tobacco, but usually it's full cigarettes. The RCMP has estimated that there's 50 illegal manufacturing cigarette plants on First Nations land in Ontario, or in Canada, pardon me.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, thank you. So we'll move to the official opposition, Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Thank you.
It seems to me interesting that we've spent a lot of time on this bill about a precautionary principle specifically to vape and e-cigarettes. But in the reality of contraband, it is a reality. If a government, in my mind, has put in their commitments for 3 years, that seems to me that there's absolutely something there that they're trying to address. Now, I would suggest to you that in 3 years, they haven't followed through in much of a commitment to do anything action-wise. Is that a fair statement?
I'm not suggesting that. They did pass Bill 186 a couple of years ago, and I know that meeting with various people, they're developing certain initiatives, but certainly from the coalition standpoint, they haven't introduced any meaningful action that will actually cut down on the contraband trade.
Fair enough. Meaningful is the exact word. Now, interestingly, earlier today, someone made a presentation. I didn't get a chance to ask this question, so I'd just like to ask you, and this is Mr. Schwartz from the Ontario Tobacco Research Unit, and I quote, "Self-reported data on purchase of contraband cigarettes based on large population-based surveys show a significant decline between 2008 and 2012 in Ontario, a period during which tobacco taxes increased moderately." I find that is not anywhere close to what I would have thought, and certainly what I see anecdotally in my riding.
I would disagree with that anecdotally, as well as a study that was done last year and the last few years by a market and consumer information firm called GfK, which has found that in 2014, the amount of contraband cigarettes, 1 out of every 3 cigarettes purchased in Ontario was contraband cigarette. And I do notice we had a member here, I think, from Sudbury. And the bad news for Sudbury is it's got the highest rate in the province in 2014 at 35% contraband. But that's not leading the pack by any great margin, because every municipality is running about 33% of contraband cigarettes being sold.
Yeah, and I think what I can see is, I don't see any evidence that suggests just because you smoked an e-cigarette as a youth that you actually go to real tobacco. But I do think that certainly a couple hundred for $8 is a huge influencer for people to continue to smoke all kinds of tobacco, real tobacco.
For everyone, in a sense, to do that, but I'm most concerned as a police officer and father of 4 daughters with the ready availability and targeting young people. I teach at Humber College, and I ask all my students if they know where to get contraband and what it is, and they all do. They all know where to get it. Some students are even selling it out of their locker to make extra money. It teaches them that it's okay to break the law, and it starts them smoking again. Plus, they can buy other things from these criminals.
Absolutely, and I turn over to my colleague who has a question as well.
Okay, I really appreciate your time here today. Earlier I mentioned this government has a habit of picking winners and losers. Why do you think this government is not going after contraband?
I don't have a comment on that. I just wish they would go after it in a more stringent fashion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we will move to the third party, Ms. Fife.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Grant. I'm just trying to get a sense of your coalition. You say that you're 17 organizations. Are any of those organizations actually from the tobacco industry?
Yes, one of the organization members is the Canadian Tobacco Manufacturing Council, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, as well as 17 others, including the Border Guard Association, Toronto Crime Stoppers, and many others.
So you're advocating to maintain menthol cigarettes in the system because specifically around contraband, or?
Specifically contraband. I'm a non-smoker. I think smoking, nobody should smoke. We all know that. But I think it's putting the cart before the horse to ban menthol cigarettes, which about 80,000 Ontarians smoke. About 5% of the population smokes without cutting off the illegal conduit, which is contraband, where they'll go. And as I said, there's twice as many menthol brands now as there is legal brands.
This government, though, has left a 2-year window for menthol. I mean, that could be a driver, perhaps, to demonstrate that. I mean, we don't support the 2-year window, actually, because the research out there around menthol cigarettes is pretty profound from our perspective. Just on the contraband piece, Mr. Grant, you mentioned in your presentation that, you know, obviously there has been commitments in the last 3 budgets, but very little action on anti-contraband tobacco measures. But you say that aside from tougher fines and giving local police more powers, you say that as well as a greater licensing of cigarette manufacturing materials. Can you expand on that, please?
Yes, well, the provincial government talked about licensing the tobacco that goes into to make contraband cigarettes, but that's a bit of a non-starter because most of the tobacco gets smuggled in from the States.
Sure.
So they're not going to be able to license that anyway. We're suggesting that they license things like the cigarette papers and the material, and I forget the name, I think it's called acetate tow. There's only 2 companies in the world, I'm told, that make it, and that's the things that make the filters, which are needed for all cigarettes, and that we should be following the chain there and licensing that more stringently than just talking about tobacco.
So your association, though, I mean, that's very interesting, actually. But your association is advocating just to leave menthol cigarettes in place indefinitely, or until?
No, for at least 2 years, until maybe, you know, the legislation, until maybe they gonna get a good handle on tobacco, until they introduce meaningful legislation to stop the contraband trade, which will choke off that other alternative measure place where people can buy contraband.
Well, Budget Day is Thursday, so I'm sure I'll be hearing from you as to whether or not there's going to be anything in this upcoming budget to actually address this very serious issue. Thank you.
So, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Grant. Appreciate your time coming before committee this
My
afternoon.
pleasure. Have a nice day.
You too, sir. Next on the agenda, we have below vapor. We have, I believe, the president with us, Mr. DiCarlo. Are you alone today, sir?
Yep, alone.
Welcome. You have
Thank
5
you.
minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present to you this afternoon. My name is Fernando DiCarlo. I'm the president of Below Vapor, a rapidly growing manufacturer and distributor of e-cigarette products headquartered in Vaughan. I'm here to speak to you not only about my company, Below Vapor, but about the potential of the e-cigarette market from both an economic and public health perspective. Let me be clear before I continue, as a legitimate producer of popular consumer good, we are supportive of Bill 45 in principle and greatly welcome government regulation in this market. My goal today here is 3 things. 1, illustrate the need for more regulation. 2, change any negative perception of legitimate e-cigarette producers. And 3, warn of over-regulation, which would drive the market underground. Let me speak quickly about the company. I founded Below Vapor about 6 years ago in Woodbridge, Ontario. Last year, we reached domestic and global sales of over 500,000. Our manufacturing facility is located in Pickering and will soon employ over 60 people. We currently export our various e-cigarette products to a number of stores in the U.S. and to 130 sites in Europe. We have been growing at a rate of about 200% per year. We've also subscribed, we have always subscribed to a set of principles that align with public health and have never marketed to youth. On the perception issue, let me start by saying that I understand that this is a very new product and that it has become quite controversial. Many e-cigarettes and e-liquids are produced overseas, mostly in China. They wind up in our jurisdictions where they are brought and sold at flea markets and other unregulated outlets. Since there's no regulation, we don't know what's in these liquids and if they are even safe to consume. There are also no enforcement mechanisms to shut down retailers who are found to be selling dangerous, untested e-cigarette products. This has all led to a negative perception of the e-cigarette industry. There are good players out there and legitimate products that can provide specific benefits to the right consumer. I agree with many who feel more studies need to be done before making a proper determination on e-cigarettes. That said, there are some undeniable positive qualities that have been noted by many reports and many credible researchers. An independent group of 50 scientists and medical experts recently issued a public letter to the World Health Organization that stated e-cigarettes could be among the most significant health innovation of the 21st century, perhaps saving hundreds of millions of lives. There are so many other studies, many of which have been mentioned here today. Overwhelming, they point to an opportunity to harness the value of e-cigarettes for the public benefit. Again, our company is supportive of greater regulation in our industry. That said, we feel that there are elements of Bill 45 that should be revisited to ensure the public health benefit of our products are realized. My thoughts include the following. E-cigarettes with nicotine should only be sold by licensed retailers that are subject to oversight of public health officials. Flavoring e-cigarettes should not be restricted, as they help smokers disassociate nicotine with tobacco flavor. In-store displays should be allowed so long as they are not crafted in a way that appeals to youth. Blow Vapor has in-store displays that provide informational material by way of video on how to consume the product safely and which limit access to the product via locked and key. E-cigarettes should be allowed to be consumed in most, if not all, outdoor public spaces. These recommendations accommodate the public's concern while allowing existing smokers the opportunity to take advantage of this technology to quit. I am happy to build on these specific recommendations in questions and answer time. Just in conclusion, I want to stress that through this process, government has a great opportunity to, one, harness the positive benefits of e-cigarettes from a public health smoking cessation perspective, two, avoid driving the market underground, three, attract investment in a newly regulated industry in Ontario, and four, save money for public health care. Thank you for your time. Look forward to taking some questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. DiCarlo, and we shall start with the NDP, the third party, Ms. Jelinet.
Thank you so much for being here. Specifically, what is it in the bill that you don't want? Like, there are big parts of the regulation that you seem to be in favor of. From your deputations, what I got is that you oppose the display and ban on flavoring.
Yes.
The rest of it you're okay with?
Yes.
Okay, so you really see your products as something that people will come into your store. There won't be big advertising outside the store. There will be educational material once you reach inside the store. They will buy your products there and go home and use it as they see fit.
Yes. Just to be clear, sorry, we're not retailers, we're actually manufacturers and suppliers.
Okay, you're manufacturer and suppliers.
Yeah.
Sorry, you had said, how do you know that the people you will be selling to will be adhering to that?
Well, I think in one of my points I mentioned that it should go to retail stores who already have that in place, typically those who sell tobacco products today. I believe there should be age verification. We, matter of fact, have it in our displays under lock and key, which means that they can see them, but there should be age verification upon the sale.
Okay, and do you manufacture the actual e-cig or just the cartridges or both?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
And how many versions of e-cigarettes do you manufacture?
Well, there's three types of e-cigarettes, and maybe I should kind of explain just the breakdown very quickly. One is what's called a disposable, which means you use it, once it's consumed, you throw it away. The second one is what's called a cartomizer, which means you replace the flavor to it, and it's a battery-operated system. And the third one is a liquid system, where you buy a tank and you choose your flavor liquid and your nicotine level and vape the liquid that you want.
So do you presently have products that have nicotines in them?
Yes, we do.
You do?
Yeah.
And how do you get around the fact?
We don't sell any of those in Canada. We have a U.S. office, and we sell those only to U.S. market and to Europe.
Okay.
The
And
UK specifically, actually.
do you see selling those in Canada at some point?
We'd love to, yes. We believe that smoking cessation is impossible without nicotine.
Smoking cessation is what?
Is impossible without nicotine. The first adopters to e-cigarettes are smokers. Smokers need nicotine in order to wean off what they're doing now.
What do you think of vapor lounge where people actually go to use this product as a social activity.
I have no problem with it, quite frankly. I think that I'm not a big favor of combustibles, which means, I know a gentleman showed hookahs earlier today. I think combustibles are dangerous no matter what form they're in. But I think if you have a hookah lounge, a vaping lounge like you have a cigar lounge, if it's age appropriate, it's no different than a bar.
And who does the testing on the products that you put out, those liquid and those cartridges? Who does the testing?
Right now, we do. And we would love some regulation on that. We would actually love to help the government craft some regulation about what liquids need and how you actually determine what's safe and what's not.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it, and we'll move to the government. Ms. Hogarth.
Hello, Fernando. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that you believe that there should be some control over the liquid.
No question.
However, there is supposed to be a control in that nicotine is not supposed to be used in it, correct?
Correct.
And you do use in it, but you're telling
don't.
me it's not used, it's not sold in Ontario.
That's right. That's right. We don't even distribute in Canada. Our products come and go straight to our U.S. office.
Okay, I have another question here. Your website describes Blow Vapor as a bold and new sexy lifestyle brand for those who have a controversial side, a sexy side, a fun side, and an edgy side. Your site says that your products provide retailers large margins and low maintenance selling and can be used in restaurants, bars, offices, and other public places where smoking bans are typically in effect. So, are you really marketing to people who want to quit smoking?
I think we are. Most of the people who are, actually, I don't even think we are. We definitely are, because the products that we have, and I have to make something clear, because in Canada we're not allowed to sell nicotine, we are only selling our product as a smoking cessation. And for those of you who are smokers, I'm not one of them, the ability to move something to your mouth, according to research, is very important. We only have flavor available for those to help them wean off of nicotine or off of tobacco combustible products. That's all we can do in Canada. Unfortunately, we're abiding by the law, and the law clearly, our attorneys say no nicotine is allowed. So,
Well, I appreciate that you're abiding by the law. There have not been too many people here today who are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we shall move to the official opposition, Mr. Hillier.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for being here today. Just want to go over your recommendations. I think they're important, and maybe restate a couple of elements for the committee. So, e-cigarettes with nicotine, you believe should be sold by licensed retailers?
no question.
Right. Flavoring in e-cigarettes should not be restricted as they help the cessation or the replacement, however you want to. And maybe I should make a comment there. There's smoking cessation and there's also nicotine replacement therapy. Those are two different phrases that we see. And often they're combined though as well. So we see the patches, the Nicorette gum, the inhalers, they all have their nicotine replacement therapies, but also hoping to end smoking.
Correct.
Right? Okay. And you are of the view that you need to have that nicotine component in there to wean people off as an effective cessation device or replacement therapy. In-store displays should be allowed so long as they're not crafted to appeal to youth. And I think everybody's been pretty solidly behind solid regulations that prevent providing or selling vaporizers to youth. I don't think there's any disagreement or argument there. And you also have in here, e-cigarettes should also be allowed to be consumed in most, if not all, outdoor public places. And we've heard that from a number of people. Different people have qualified it that in indoor facilities that are exclusively for adults or where youth cannot be. But maybe you can expand on that one element. Why is that important in your view for vaporizers?
I think that there's two things. Number one, I think in the indoor, I'm not really opposed to a ban of indoor vaporizing. Some people are. I'm particularly not necessarily in favor of either way. I'm kind of okay. But I believe outdoors, there shouldn't be a ban. I think it's totally different to allow vaping in an outdoor open patio versus something where you're inside of a restaurant.
Yeah.
And I know that earlier somebody had mentioned about seeing clouds in a restaurant. Well, that could make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think what I've heard is that, you know, has all the evidence that I've seen appears that it's an effective way to move people off smoking. It's a gateway out of tobacco.
Yep.
And to make people who are trying to get away from tobacco to go huddle up outside with smokers, you know, is probably not the most effective way to get them to stop smoking.
Correct.
And being able to use a vaporizer on a patio or other adult locations would be that incentive to continue to stop smoking.
Okay, final quick comment. Do you have any response to that? Because your time is well over.
No, I agree. I think that the more freedom we give to adults to have the option and have the alternative to vape as opposed to smoking any combustible product, I think is a great option.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming before the committee this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. So I believe the Ontario Convenience Stores Association is next, and I believe the CEO, Mr. Bryans, is here, and an owner of a convenience store, Mr. Di Pasquale, is here. So welcome, gentlemen. I hope I pronounced that properly.
Well, good afternoon, and I'd like to thank the members of the committee for taking time to hear from the Ontario Convenience Stores Association. We represent over 7,000 small business owners and operators in Ontario, and I'm proud today to be joined by a small business retailer, Robert Di Pasquale, who operates Downsview Market in Downsview, Ontario. Convenience. We appreciate the opportunity to provide the convenience store industry's perspective on Bill 45, particularly regarding the banning of menthol tobacco, a product that has been sold to adults in our channel for over 60 years in Ontario, and it impacts about 80,000 current menthol smokers. 63% of all menthol smokers surveyed by Abacus Research stated they would source these products from Aboriginal reserves, where we know there are over 30 menthol non-tax brands presently available, with more to come. As committee members are likely aware, convenience stores are the largest retail provider of legal tobacco products in the province of Ontario. Our retailers take this responsibility very seriously, complying with all of Health Canada rules and all of Smoke-Free Ontario regulations pertaining to display bans, age testing, and more. We're the gatekeepers that prevent tobacco products and keeps them out of the hands of minors. If a retailer disobeys the law here in Ontario, they're immediately fined and could potentially lose their store for not age testing for tobacco products. This is something our association has always supported and will continue to support. It is because of this commitment to preventing youth smoking that I feel our association must address some of the statistics that have come about through the Propel study and others relating to tobacco, flavored tobacco in Canada, and specifically with respect to menthol. Thus far, the OCSA myself has refrained from weighing in on the Propel study, which has been used by various groups and government officials as the rationale behind a menthol tobacco ban in Ontario. I want to clarify some of the statements and myths around this study, as well as present some data of my own. Tobacco use by young people in Canada is at a historical low of 7%, according to Health Canada. We can all agree that any percentage of youth consumption is way too high. Until this number is at zero, there will always be work to be done together to educate and change the next generation's behaviors on smoking. However, 7% overall youth tobacco consumption is a very different number than what is cited in the Propel study, which suggests it is double that amount. The important note here is that Propel study only measures tobacco use in a 30-day period, not prolonged use. However, these statistics are driving policy decisions under the premise that it is the ongoing norm in the province of Ontario. With this in mind, the Propel study data actually reveals that of the 14% of Canadian youth who have tried a tobacco product in the last 30 days, 32% of that 14% tried a menthol product. That means that just under 4% of all youth in Canada had tried a menthol product in a month's time. While it isn't zero, 4% is a far cry from the 30% number being cited by some groups. Again, our position is very clear that no young person should have any tobacco in their possession, but we feel a flavor ban is just a Band-Aid solution to this problem. Instead, we propose the Ontario government introduce a possession, consumption, and purchasing ban on tobacco by anyone under the age of 19. This has been introduced in other jurisdictions throughout Canada and the United States, and with proper enforcement, we feel this will be over time change the behaviors and the attitudes of young people towards smoking. Should the committee and government wish to proceed with the ban on flavored tobacco products and menthol products, it is critically important that retailers are provided a fair adjustment period to ensure that we can transition these products out of our stores. Removing these items immediately will just be a knee-jerk reaction from consumers to run to the black market, and as we as an association must be able to adequately educate all retailers in Ontario about this change and so that they can all be compliant. As such, we propose a 2-year transition period from the time the legislation achieves royal assent for retailers to remove these products from the shelves. This is not an ideal outcome for small businesses in Ontario, but time is to implement a change and is fair to our retailers. I'd like to close my remarks by briefly touching on the topic of electronic cigarettes. We agree that convenience stores should be trusted to sell and handle these products, and they should not be sold to minors. It is important that we maintain control of this new emerging product category, and that they are only available for sale in licensed establishments which are inspected by the local public health units. Opening up the sale of these products beyond convenience stores does not guarantee the age checks, display bans, or other measures we are enforced. As this does represent a unique opportunity for our business, we suggest the committee consider approving the sale of e-cigarettes containing nicotine until such time that Health Canada has provided their official rulings. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for letting us sit and talk to you today. Robert and I would be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So we'll begin with the government side. Ms. Koala.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and to you both for being here, Mr. Bryans and Mr. Di Pasquale. And I just wanted to start out by saying that I'm very supportive of the work that the convenience stores have done in the past with respect to the changes that were made around smoking in general in the past many years. Fantastic job. I used to work in a federal office and got lots of literature which I was surprised to see, but you've been really solid on that front, so I thank you for your work there. You've brought up the Propel Center and some of the statistics, and we're looking at statistics from the Propel Center that says that young smokers disproportionately use menthol, about 1 in 4, compared to approximately 5% of adult smokers. How can you continue to claim that it's an adult product?
I'll answer that. It's a great question. I think I clarified that in my speech, that it isn't 1 in 4, it's 4% of young people. And that's clarifying the Propel study.
Okay. Well, the information that we have that's coming forward does state those statistics. In 2011, the University of Waterloo's International Tobacco Control Policy Evaluation Project surveyed Canadian menthol smokers and asked what they would do if menthol were no longer available. 35% said they would quit smoking, 40% said that they would choose another cigarette brand, 21% said they don't know, and 4% said they would both choose another brand and stop smoking, which ultimately is what we're here to do, and we hope that more people do quit smoking with this precautionary legislation. What do these numbers tell us about the claim that menthol smokers will turn to contraband sources if menthol cigarettes are banned?
No, I'll try them, because we did an Abacus study January 2015, so it's just recent. We have shared it with the health department, and 63% of all smokers said if you were to ban a flavor like menthol, they would get it from the Aboriginal Reserve. So 63% of 80,000 smokers, you would hurt small business by sending our customers to the underground economy. And I'll let Robert maybe comment.
I was just going to comment that I can't speak to these large numbers, but I can tell you that I was talking to my customer whose name is Antonella, and another customer of mine whose name is Maria. Maria smokes Vogue Slims menthol, and Antonella smokes the same. They're friends, and they both told me specifically that if I stopped, I brought this to their attention and asked them to contact their MPP to give them feedback, and they both told me, they said it's kind of a non-issue for them. They know where they can buy it, contraband, and if I don't have it, they know where they can get it, where it's available.
We do have some studies that suggest they'll come back
Appreciate that.
to-
So, thank you. So we'll move to the official opposition. Mr.
Chair, and
Walker.
thank you both for coming today, and, thank you for bringing that fact of the 4% as opposed to 1 in 4, because that's pretty easy to get mixed up, and I would reference that, recently we had a researcher in who used another fact about contraband going down, and the Contraband Association that just came in refuted that. So there's a lot of fact out there that necessarily just because you hear it doesn't make it true. I want to also add that I met recently with our interim leader, Jim Wilson, with the Korean Business Association on this and a number of other factors. But one of the things that they're concerned with absolutely is that it's hard enough now to make a go in business, and all the regulations and the red tape and the reporting and the inspections and the overzealous inspectors that are coming in when they're doing their best. They don't want to see youth smoking either. I mean, they can lose their livelihood if they do that. So they're working very hard to do that. So I want to make sure, and I found it interesting, again, one of the key points that I pulled out of your presentation is the idea of making possession illegal. If you're under 19, you can't possess alcohol. So why, if they really wanted to get at the root of youth smoking, a lot of where we see the distribution centers, the point of sale, if you will, is on our school grounds. And that's not just the adolescent, that's on our public school grounds as well. So, if I have two boys, if they both knew it was illegal, it's a lot different than, well, oh yeah, we're not supposed to, but there's nothing actually that's going to happen, Dad, if I get caught with this. So I think that's a huge thing. And I would like to know if they consulted you on any of this before it was actually brought in as legislation.
We've had, we've had meetings with the health department, but everyone's pretty adamant, as you've heard from past questions, that we have-
Clarification, not the health department. I'm asking specifically the Liberal government. Did they consult you as an industry, as an organization, prior to bringing this legislation forward?
The ministry's had us in for meetings, and we've expressed our opinion that, banning menthol would hurt small business, would send 80,000 adult smokers to the underground economy. No one seems to have the interest at this time to help us correct contraband. So those are the two reasons why we've said don't ban menthol, and let's help our youth by banning possession, consumption, and purchasing. If we're not going to fix the illegal market, we're going to keep banning things because of youth, then let's ban youth like they do with alcohol, and I agree with that, and thank you.
And certainly anecdotally from a lot of my retailers in my riding of Bruce Grey and Sound have said to me, they're not stopping smoking, they're just going to go somewhere else. You're not going to get the taxes, I'm not going to have as big a business, I'm going to probably lay people off. So think about this before you do it, and I'll turn it over to my colleague.
Okay, very good. Thanks for being here today. Have you done your own butt study, so to speak? And what did you find?
So we do a butt study every year. We sweep the same 130 sites, and in there we sweep high schools, hospitals, racetracks, and we find that youth possession of contraband is as high as 48% in some high schools and as low as 0 in others. So congratulations to that high school. But the trend line shows that it's going up, it's not going down. And it's an unscientific study. I think I've said it in past meetings, but nobody's admitting they're selling it, no one's admitting they're buying it. And we do have issues around the growth of contraband. I think I've sang like a canary at this committee for about 4 years now, or the committee saying it's time to fix contraband. It hasn't gone anywhere, but the butt study reaffirms. And this October, I will be doing the same 130 sites to show you the trend line, and we'll see where it goes as far as illegal products.
Why do you think this government is avoiding that issue, the contraband issue?
One quick response.
I wish I had the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall move to Ms. Jelinek.
Nice to see you again. You've asked that if they are to move ahead with banning flavored products, including menthol, you wrote, we propose a 2-year transition period from the time legislation achieved royal assent for retailer to remove these products from these shelves. Take me through, why do you need 2 years? Why not 2 months, why not 3 years, and how will you use that time? Why is it that we need that 2 years? What will you do? Walk me through.
To be honest, I don't believe you should ban it in 2 years. Right now, it's a regulated market. We have to go through licensing from the city. We have provincial licenses to sell tobacco. It's called PPT. That's a provincial tax permit. None of the tobacco companies will deal with us without these licenses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, it's regulated, it's controlled. If my staff is...
You're missing your opportunity here. If you don't convince me that it takes 2 years, well, then why don't we just do it on January 1st, 2016, like we will ban every other flavor? If you want menthol to have an extension, what are you going to use those 2 years for?
Great. I'll answer that. What we need the 2 years for is, A, to get our customers adjusted. They're going to have to change. If they don't change, they're going to go to the underground market. We also need time to realign our business because we're going to lose another 5 to 8% of our daily sales. I don't know how small business is ever going to replace all of these rules that are coming out. We have a pension plan coming that's going to cost us 2%. We have punishing hydro rates, and to now eliminate a product overnight that is probably 60% of your sales, the total tobacco category, and to eliminate part of that would really put small business. In the United States, convenience stores are growing at 1.5% a year. In Ontario, they're dying at 3% a year. And that's because we're over-regulated and we need time to adjust in our whole business model. It's just not one specific date. 2 is a number that was already suggested to me from the ministry, and I agree with that. It could be 5 years, but I'm not going to sit here and think out of the box and say that that'll work or won't work.
So the 2 years is really, you said, to help your customer transition away from menthol. How does a small business owner do that?
A small business owner is, tobacco is a sunset category. It's dropping at about 1.5 to 2% a year. Menthol will kick it up to 7% immediately. So you'll probably lose about 300 stores immediately. So what we're saying, give us time to work with our business model and our customers to educate them that change is coming. We're going to face a ban on flavored cigars. We're going to face a ban on flavored chew. I mean, a big part of our business is going out the door, and I know there's not a lot of sympathy for the tobacco industry or tobacco business, but I think there has to be some acceptance that small business just can't be cut off overnight.
Not to mention that we don't want our customers immediately going to contraband. Hopefully within 2 years' time, the government comes up with a better solution to better handle contraband and the contraband market. So it'll allow you guys sufficient time to improve laws and legislation against contraband. So our customers aren't switching to an alternative market that's unregulated.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your input.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
This afternoon's delegations. Appreciate it. So next we have the Canadian Cancer Society, the national office, and I believe Mr. Rob Cunningham is with us, Senior Policy Analyst. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Lots of samples. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Rob Cunningham. I'm a lawyer and Senior Policy Analyst with the Canadian Cancer Society National Office. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today with respect to Bill 45. This is a bill that's going to make a difference to reduce tobacco use in Ontario. We commend the bill for being brought forward. We commend this bill to all MLAs for their support. You have 4 handouts from me. 2 of these deal with proposed amendments. You've already heard reference today to proposals to add regulatory authority in an amendment to the bill to allow controls on use of non-tobacco herbal water pipe smoking. So to be able, by regulation in the future, to say that wherever smoking is banned, you wouldn't be able to use this water pipe smoking, the herbal shisha. Nova Scotia has already done that. That comes into force May 31st. Vancouver's already done it. More municipalities have already done it. Alberta has legislation that's not yet proclaimed that does exactly that. The second amendment is with respect to banning flavored cigarette papers. And I have with me all kinds of flavors, root beer, cotton candy, many others. If these are not banned, there'd be a loophole. They would be able to undermine the intent of the ban on flavors. These should not be allowed to be sold. And as part of the handout, one of your handouts, you have scanned images of these packages for future reference for members of the committee once I take these packages away. Nova Scotia's bill introduced on Friday to ban flavored tobacco includes a ban on cigarette papers. U.S. national legislation, which bans flavored cigarettes, includes cigarette papers when sold separately and other components of a cigarette. The U.S. national legislation exempts menthol. In terms of what the trends are in terms of flavored legislation, Ontario is consistent with those trends. So Bill 90 introduced Friday in Nova Scotia will ban flavors in all tobacco products, a few cigar exceptions, but includes a ban on menthol. And so essentially the Nova Scotia bill will do what the Ontario bill is doing. In the European Union, which has 28 countries, there's going to be a ban on menthol that's being implemented in a very complex legislative environment. New York City adopted a city ordinance in 2009 to ban flavors in all tobacco products. It exempted menthol, but now the US FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is looking at what they can do with respect to banning menthol. And other provinces are looking at this. Legislation is expected in Quebec, Alberta has legislation. Ontario is building on that. It's consistent with the international trends. With respect to the trends for e-cigarette legislation, we see more municipalities and provinces and states adopting legislation along the lines of what Ontario has done. The best example is Nova Scotia. So just to clarify what happened in Nova Scotia, there is a bill that received royal assent in November, and what was adopted is actually very similar to Bill 45. The flavored part of that bill was removed in committee, as was mentioned. So there's no restrictions on flavors adopted yet, although the bill introduced on Friday will give regulatory authority to restrict flavored e-cigarettes, which is exactly the same provision as you see in Bill 45. So as of May 31st, Nova Scotia, sales to minors of e-cigarettes are banned. Use of e-cigarettes in workplaces and public places where smoking is banned, that's going to come into force. And Nova Scotia, the e-cigarette specialty retailers supported that ban on the use in public places and workplaces where smoking was banned, just as the representative of Blow Vapor did here today. The Ontario bill, from a provincial responsibility perspective, implements many of the recommendations of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Health. So there's consistency in approach that's evolving. And with respect to contraband, if I could have a few comments on that before I close. The final handout that you have for me provides data from the international tobacco companies that is different from what we heard today. So this particular graph from Philip Morris International documents how in Ontario there is a tremendous decrease in the proportion of contraband from 49% in 2008 to 27% in 2011. The Ontario Convenience Store Association gave a release last fall saying that according to their BUT study, it was 21.5% province-wide in 2014 compared to 20% in 2013. Now, we haven't seen their methodology, see this is even an overestimate, but their numbers, and I will provide that news release to members of the committee, is significantly lower than the estimates that have been heard today. The tobacco industry and the associations that they belong to, such as the Convenience Store Association, have a long history of opposing all types of legislation saying it's going to be contraband. They oppose tobacco taxes. They oppose putting larger warnings on packages because it's going to cause contraband. They oppose Bill C-32 because of flavored cigarillos. They oppose hard tobacco. It's always contraband is why we can't do it. So,
final one.
So in summary, it's only 4% of the market that represents menthol in terms of cigarette sales, far lower than other countries. This is a very feasible measure. It's one that we strongly support. This is a measure going to reduce tobacco use in Ontario. We support the bill and commend it to your consideration. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and we shall move to the official opposition. Mr. Hillier.
Thank you very much, and thanks for being here today. I find it interesting that you're using a Philip Morris study and you're on illicit or tobacco and contraband, and with, I don't know how peer-reviewed that is, but you're accepting that as face value, that contraband or illicit tobacco has gone down. And then I see that what we've heard often from people in the NGOs and the not-for-profits, that they're not willing to accept that there's not enough studies yet on the benefits or the positives of e-cigarettes as health cessation devices or nicotine replacement therapies. So I find that interesting that you would put that out, that, you know, Philip Morris says that illicit tobacco is down. We should take that, because we have heard from Cary Grant earlier that that contraband tobacco is indeed increasing. In my area, we now have more native smoke shops in my riding now than we did 3 and 4 years ago. They no longer have to be on reservations any longer. They're on Highway 7 now. The availability, the accessibility of contraband tobacco is growing from all evidence that I can see.
So sometimes the industry, the tobacco industry, says one thing publicly and a different thing to investors and stock analysts. These are reports that they gave to stock analysts. So we want to clarify that their statements today are not consistent with their statements elsewhere.
Right.
So there's indications that contraband has gone down. At the same time, more can be done to further reduce contraband.
Mm-hmm.
We made recommendations along those lines to the federal government, to the Ontario government. And if we need to step up measures with respect to contraband in companion to this bill, that's certainly something we would support.
So you don't really believe that contraband tobacco has gone down?
No, I think by all indications, in terms of the legal tax paid sales, in terms of looking at the actual government data, that is further indication that contraband has gone down in Ontario and in Canada.
That contraband, you're saying that contraband has gone down?
Yes, it has.
Fewer illicit tobacco shops or the use of tobacco?
Well, I think the volume of illegal cigarettes sold has gone down. Whether that affects the number of the smoke shacks, I don't know in terms of the number of stores. But the quantity of illegal cigarettes in Ontario has gone down substantially, as Philip Morris International has told stock analysts.
I find that, again, I just find that interesting that, and that you are pretty confident in that statement, but we can't get anywhere near that level of assertiveness or certainty from the hundreds of studies that are showing e-cigarettes to be a positive and beneficial cessation device. Thank you.
Much, Mr. Hillier. Ms. Jelinek.
I will ask you the same question I asked. Could you think of a reason why we would delay banning menthol for 2 years?
No. And in Nova Scotia, the implementation date is May 31st, 2015. When we've implemented federal measures to restrict flavors, to change package warnings, it's been far, far less than 2 years.
Do you believe that if we pass the ban on flavored tobacco, including menthol, that less Ontarians will smoke?
Yes, I think that we'll see a decrease in smoking and tobacco use, and that will accumulate over time.
From the point of view of the Canadian Cancer Society, do you see menthol as a gateway for young people to start smoking?
Yes. Menthol encourages youth to begin. It's a local anesthetic. It soothes the throat, reduces harshness. It also discourages cessation among adults. And there's some very good evidence with respect to that effect. There's absolutely, for a product that's highly addictive and causes death, there's no reason why we should allow flavors to make it taste better. For kids that have medicines that don't taste good, we want kids to take their medicines. That's why we add flavors. Cigarettes kill.
There's no reason for it. When it comes to e-cigarettes, you've heard some of the arguments that says the product is the flavor. If we ban the flavor in e-cigarettes, we ban the products. Do you believe that to be true?
So this bill will give regulatory authority to restrict flavors. There's no ban on flavors in this bill. Should there be some restrictions on flavors? Yes. Should we have cotton candy and chocolate flavored e-cigarettes? No. Should there be some restrictions? Absolutely. But this bill doesn't do that.
And is the Canadian Cancer Society looking at the value of e-cigarette as a smoking cessation aid?
So we're continually studying this, evaluating the research. The research continues to emerge. And even with a future consensus that this is, very good, it's not one-dimensional, because we have industry marketing that is using this to keep people smoking through lifestyle marketing, encouraging people to use this where smoking is banned, encouraging dual use. And the purpose of this bill recognizes potential benefits and potential risks. Regulation is needed. This bill deals with the portion that is the potential risks, so we need to minimize the downside.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We shall move to the government side, and we'll move to Ms. Koala.
Thank you very much for being here today. Mr. Cunningham, we have appreciated your testimony. And I'm wondering if, considering the last couple of witnesses that we had here, if you could clarify the stats from the Propel Center regarding the incidence of youth smokers.
So I think that study is very important. Canada-wide, 50% of high school students who use tobacco use flavored tobacco. 29% of high school smokers who smoke menthol. And, if you look at grades 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds, where the smoking prevalence is very low, which is what Mr. Bryans did, the previous witness, that will distort the overall average. But if you're only to look at grade 12 students, because we know that as you get older, more and more people start smoking during their adolescence. But if you only looked at 12%, only grade 12 students, the number is far higher, enormously higher than when you mix in grades 6, 7, and 8s.
Right. Thank you. Is there definitive scientific evidence that suggests or that e-cigarettes are not a health risk for users or the public, or that they are effective as tobacco smoking cessation devices?
So with respect to secondhand vapor, so it's called, we have to recognize as well that not all e-cigarettes are the same. Some e-cigarettes have additional ingredients than were mentioned by the four earlier today. And there are substances that are in e-cigarette vapor that need to be regulated. And that's why there is widespread support and increasing legislative action to ensure that workplaces do not have use in public places, use of e-cigarettes. There's another point, is that smoke-free workplaces and public places are a really effective motivator to get people to quit. And if you allow e-cigarettes in those locations, it can encourage dual use, decrease that motivation to quit. And so if people, that can sustain smoking. And that is not the intent that we've heard, from many companies.
Do you believe that Bill 45 takes an appropriate approach to regulating e-cigarettes in Ontario?
Yes, I think what Ontario is doing is similar to what BC and what Nova Scotia are doing, what is being considered in other provinces. It takes an appropriate approach. E-cigarettes clearly need regulation. The regulation in Bill 45 is appropriate regulation.
Okay. That's great.
20 seconds.
I
Mr.
think
Cole.
Mr. Hillier raised a good question here about the motivation about this chart, eh? So I guess our friends at Philip Morris are trying to persuade their shareholders that things are good and that they're not losing that much of market share to the underground economy. So therefore, they don't mind demonstrating that this loss to the underground economy isn't as much as they say in other forums about the underground economy. Am I interpreting this right, or
Well,
general way?
Very quick response.
Trying to
Yes or no?
interpret Philip
Thing is,
Morris.
Yes or no?
If they give misrepresentation to their shareholders, there are serious sanctions for that.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much. Appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming before committee, Mr. Cunningham, this afternoon. So next we have the Canadian Beverage Association. Mr. Jim Getz. My apologies, sir. No problem. And we welcome you here this afternoon. It's okay.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Getz.
Thank you.
President, Canadian Beverage Association. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude for the invitation to appear today. My name is Jim Getz, and I'm president of the Canadian Beverage Association, representing the non-alcoholic, non-dairy beverage industry. Our industry makes a substantial contribution to the economic life of Ontario. Our member companies provide direct employment for some 7,700 Ontarians and indirectly employ over 17,000 more through jobs related to our industry, such as transportation, production, distribution, construction, retail, and the restaurant sector. In total, we have more than 60 facilities province-wide, including facilities in Windsor, London, Kingston, Barrie, Ontario, Owen Sound, generating $2.9 billion of added value to Ontario's economy. We are proud of our economic footprint, and we are also aware that as an industry, we bear important responsibilities, especially when it comes to offering consumers a healthy balance of beverage choices and the necessary information to make informed beverage choice decisions. Our industry has already voluntarily implemented a caloric labeling initiative, Clear on Calories, started in 2011. This industry-led initiative provides front-of-pack caloric labeling on all of our members' products. Clear on Calories is designed to help consumers be aware of both the caloric content and serving size of the beverages they are choosing. Our industry has been and will continue to be a leader in addressing issues such as public health through product innovation, educational advertising, smaller package sizes, and industry-specific guidelines and initiatives. The Canadian Beverage Association believes that industry-led initiatives which provide the necessary caloric information and education are essential if Ontarians are going to be able to make the choices that are best for themselves and their families. Considering our industry's track record in providing consumers with clear, standardized, and visible caloric information on our packaged products, we respectfully ask the committee to consider some flexibility in the caloric labeling requirements for fountain beverages sold at restaurants in Ontario. Due to the wide array of beverage cup sizes and flavors available to consumers, it would be very difficult and cumbersome for our consumers, the restaurant, food, and service industry as well, to display the specific caloric content for such a wide variety of options. To ensure that Ontarians are still adequately informed of their caloric content of our fountain beverages, we propose that the legislation or regulation consider caloric designation ranges on menu and menu board labeling. These calorie designations would provide the range of calories for each cup size without requiring restaurants to list up to 50 separate flavors and varieties. We believe this is a balanced solution to ensure Ontarians are aware of the caloric content of their fountain beverage choices while reducing the burden on consumers and clients. Secondly, we would also like to propose an exemption for calorie labeling requirement for packaged beverages where the product's clear on calorie front of pack declaration is visible to consumers. This includes, for example, reach-in coolers at cafeterias, quick service restaurants, or where sample packages are clearly displayed. With the caloric content of each product so clearly displayed, we believe that additional labeling is not required to properly educate the consumer. We sincerely believe that these two proposals are aligned with the legislation's intent while minimizing any unnecessary labeling requirements to our consumers and the interaction between our consumers and sales teams. I want to emphasize, we recognize that we must be part of a shared effort, and we're very committed to doing our part. At the Canadian Beverage Association, we're more than prepared to keep working in partnership with the Government of Ontario in pursuit of those goals, from industry-led initiatives such as Clear on Calories to our future initiatives which will reduce beverage calories in the Canadian diet. On that note, I bring my remarks to a close. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear in front of you, and I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Getz, and we shall move to Mr. Cole from the government side.
Oh, good to see you again.
Hello.
Yes, one of my pet peeves, if I look at the back, the writing is always so small in terms of trying, because I do look and see how many calories am I going to drink and how much sodium. I look for calories in sodium. But what I find, I don't know if it's just the beverage industry or whether it's your members, but they're playing a little trick. So some of the containers will say, for 1 can, there are in here no calories. Some other containers will have, for half a can, there are so many calories. So I would pick it up and I'd look at the calorie count, and I think that's the calorie count for the full can rather than the half can. So and I think they do it for some food products too. So is that what you're talking about? You're talking about clear calories or that program?
The beverage industry, when we introduced the Clear on Calories program in 2011, made changes to the serving size ratio versus the calories. Depending on the age of that can in front of you, you should see on the very front of it that there's a Clear on Calorie tablet, which would, if that's Diet Coke, I believe.
Yeah.
Should say, I believe.
This one here, 0?
Yep. Right on, there's a tablet on the front. That is for that serving size. Where we also made some changes were on the slightly larger bottles, with 500 milliliter or 591. Those used to be labeled on the caloric content as a multi-serve. In 2011, the industry made that change. The calories reflected on the front and on the back are now for the entire bottle. When you get into larger sizes, larger bottles, which are taken home, consumed over a weekend or whatever, that is then labeled as a serving size as dictated by Health Canada.
Like 1 cup or so many
Yeah,
milliliters?
yeah, that's standardized, but all of our, what are considered single serve now are single serve with the
So
calories.
single serve, so I pick up from, and who are your members? Like, are these the?
Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Canada Dry Mott's, Nestle Water, Cott Beverages.
So these other smaller, other organizations, they may not treat it the same way then?
Not everyone is on board with our program, but our industry represents approximately 85 to 90% of the market in Canada.
So if I pick up a can of Coke or Pepsi, I'm looking at the calorie count and I'm trying to read it with my glasses.
It is standardized.
It's standardized for the container?
Yes, it is.
Unless it's a big sucker, like the Americans drink, where they walk around with these big gulps, mega gulps, then it's a different story. But for the ordinary Canadian little guy, it's basically very
those are
clear
standardized
for that container.
Yeah,
Serving size.
and what is unique about our program is other individual companies. Some do have caloric labeling, different practices, etc. This is the only initiative in North America, quite frankly, where it's across multiple companies. So to your point, Pepsi, Coke, Canada Dry Mott's, it's all the standard packaging and all the standard rules on how many calories will be put on the front.
Okay, thank you very much,
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Cole. I know, Mr. Cole, you could go on for a long time here, but we'll have to go to Mr. Walker.
Lisa, you go ahead first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for coming here
Ms.
today.
Dawson.
Thank you.
And I have one question for you. Were you consulted prior to Bill 45 coming to the House?
In a formal way, we were not.
You were not?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
For you.
Mr. Walker.
Good.
Mine's kind of a little different area. One of the things that I think I'm fully, I think, on board with regard to anything we can do to stop our kids from maintaining obesity, anything we can do to help families, anyone who's struggling with that type of thing. One of the concerns I have with some of the caloric labeling is, again, all of us have different metabolisms, all of us have different sizes, all of us may have drank something earlier before we went into that restaurant. My concern is really, again, that we're kind of doing one little piece, but I'm not certain that it's enough. And I think what I would have liked to have seen in this bill, again, had we been consulted, similar to your industry, that we could have put some things forward in at least tabling the draft that would have talked about physical fitness and the things that are going to have more impact than just caloric labeling. And we had the Restaurants Association in. So one of the concerns they have, again, is the repetitive cost and what happens in the overzealous inspection side of things. Do you have any of those, share those similar concerns?
I'm not a doctor, and my specialty is not obesity. However, it's well documented that obesity is a very complex issue. The food you consume and the beverages you consume are certainly one part of it, but they are one part of it. We as an industry are doing what we can to show that our beverages, some of them do contain calories, but in a 2,022 100 daily caloric intake diet, there's a wide range of beverages you can choose, which suit your lifestyle. I consume full calorie and diet various times in the week. I've maintained the same weight I've been since university. However, what we are trying to do with our initiative is provide the information to consumers, similar to what's on this bill. However, we're putting forward some what we think are reasonable compromises on exactly how those calories would be displayed. For example, a restaurant that over 20 chains may just list beverages, pop and juice. Well, they might have 10 varieties of each in the back. That's why we're asking for some discussions about a range.
Absolutely.
Because some of those you can't just put the highest range because our diet products contain 0 calories. You can't put the lowest either. We understand that. It is about transparency. Why we're asking for where in some restaurants where you walk up and pull your product off the shelf, we have already put the calories on the label. And for our customers to have to change that when there might be 30 products in that fridge, it's very cumbersome.
Please.
Thank you very much. I wish, yes. Thank you. Ms. Jelinek.
I want to continue down. So do you figure that the way the bill is written now would not allow for different flavor of juice that are similar in calorie content to be captured under one? Is this the impression you have?
Well, we're just here to try to make sure that that can and does happen, quite frankly.
Okay, so so you're not coming with amendments where you want us to change the content of the bill? You just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that when we will go to a restaurant and a number of juices have about between 100 and 120 calories, it will list like a whole bunch of flavor between 100 and 120 calories, but you wouldn't put pop 0 to 250, because then that doesn't help anybody.
But some of the pop does contain 0 calories, some of it may contain 250. That's fact. So that has to be reflected in what consumers are being legislated to look at on those menus. And on behalf of our industry, we are constantly innovating to give products that are 0 calorie or somewhere in between or full calorie. And that has to be reflected.
But I
It's
wanna
misleading. It's misleading for the consumer to either, as I stated, just list them all as full calorie when they're not.
Okay,
Or
but
some,
I want to make sure, and our time is really limited,
Yeah.
so I want to make sure, the way I understand the bill before, because I have written it 8 times, is that if all of the juices that are within 10% of the calorie could all be listed as one. Same thing with the pop, but you would not put a pop at 0 and a pop at 250 with the same. Within 10% of one another is the way that the bill presently is meant to be rolled out. Are you saying that we should have a bigger than this? Like if it's more than 10%, they could still be grouped together?
well, there's going to be juices that will not fit within that 10%.
Then you would have to list them separately.
That could be pretty cumbersome on the menus. And the fact is, it's misleading to consumers, even on the juice side or the pop side, to not fully show what their calorie options are. At the same time, it is unworkable on certain menus to list all the options that might be available.
Do you have anybody in mind where it would be unworkable, like the people you deal with right now? Who's going to have a hard time with this?
Well, I'm not going to speak on behalf of our restaurant clients. I'm just stating that we have a lot of products on the market that give all consumers options on their calories, and we believe that that should be properly reflected in the information that the province is asking those clients to put forward.
Okay, so this idea that if you are within 10%, you could be grouped together, that's not good enough for you?
There's lots of restaurants that might provide 30 or 40 different beverage options. 10% on calories, given the innovation that our industry is bringing to the market, is a pretty narrow window.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Getz, for coming forward and sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon. So there is Mr. Walker.
Point of order. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's been a great day, a lot of information shared today, and as such, I would like to move that the committee amend the method of proceeding on Bill 45.
I just have to interject, you can't move a motion on a point of order. So do you have a specific point of order? If not,
I have a motion. Sorry, maybe I used the wrong terminology. My apologies, Mr. Chair. I'll retract the point of order.
Thank you.
I would ask if I could, I would move that the committee amend the method of proceeding on Bill 45, an act to enhance public health by enacting the Healthy Menu Choices Act 2014 and the Electronic Cigarettes Act, and I believe this motion will be shared with everyone, 2014, and by amending the Smoke-Free Ontario Act to reflect the following. Number one, that the committee hold public hearings on Bill 45 in Toronto at Queen's Park on Monday, April 27th, and on Wednesday, April 29th, 2015, during its regular meeting times. Two, that any additional witnesses are to be selected from the prioritized list previously supplied to the clerk by the subcommittee members. That groups and individuals, number three, sorry, that groups and individuals be offered 5 minutes for their presentations, followed by up to 9 minutes for questions by committee members. Number four, that the deadline for receipt of written submissions on Bill 45 be 5 p.m. on Wednesday, April 29th, 2015. Number five, that amendments to Bill 45 be filed with the clerk of the committee by 3 p.m. on Thursday, April 30th, 2015. And six, that the committee meet on Monday, May 4th, 2015, during its regular meeting time for clause-by-clause consideration of Bill 45. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
okay, so Mr. Walker has moved this particular motion. Is there any further discussion?
We will not be supporting the motion.
You wouldn't even consider having a discussion about it. When there's that much
No,
That's
we,
not
we've
gonna
added
make
an extra day of hearings, and we won't be supporting the motion. I'm being straight with you about it. I'm
So
not-
the health of Ontarians, you're not going to give us an extra day or
Okay,
2 days?
so if I may,
Consult with
if, okay, order please, order please. If it's 6 o'clock, if this is still on the table at 6 o'clock, I have to advise the committee members, and we're almost there, is it will be discussed at the next committee meeting, which is tomorrow at 9 a.m. We already have scheduled delegations coming before us, so this looks like it could be a hearty debate. So I just would like to let everyone on the committee know that I have to actually adjourn the meeting now. It is 6 o'clock, and we will introduce this.
Can we call a vote right now?
I wouldn't call the, okay, as chair, I wouldn't call the vote anyway, because there has to be some discussion on it. So it is now, the bells have rung, it is 6 o'clock, this meeting is adjourned.
Good job, Mr.